Hello, my name is Danil Nevsky, and this is my Sip Talk. As with every bartender, as with every person in the bar industry, as always, this is an accident. We all fall into this industry with nobody, I believe, at the age of 10, turns around to their parents and says, hey, I want to make cocktails. And so, very realistically, this was almost an accident. When we moved to Scotland at the age of 15 and I wanted to meet a girl and go to a cinema, my dad said, well, why don't you get a job? And so I got a job in a local 3-star hotel for Scottish weddings, the most gender-neutral weddings in the world because everyone is wearing a skirt. And I was just a waiter. And that's where it all began. And so after that, once you get the hospitality, I would say addiction, it's like a drug and you end up moving on and suddenly the person behind the bar looks more interesting than just being on the floor. So that's at the age of 18, I moved into the bar and moved into a bigger city, moved to a better bar, moved to a nightclub. It kind of cascades. It's like a domino effect. I think digital communication and social media has changed the way people interact. If you think about it, 100 years ago, what is the internet? What the internet is people sharing some sort of information. So back then, our version of the internet was people coming into bars, restaurants, cafes. That was the chat room, and every chat room had its own administrator, and that was usually the host or the bartender. And what has changed is that because now we can talk through our phones, now we can talk through digital communication, the administrator is no longer the bartender. We're not as important in the society in that way. And so there was a huge interest in the craft of the cocktail or of the drink or of the brand. Now, I believe, if we talk about alcohol brands or drinking or being out, I think it's important that bartenders retake that position of being the voice in that section. I think bartenders need to start becoming, again, like sort of community leaders. They should voice and use social media more to communicate with their guests as opposed to other bartenders. I believe there will come a time that if a bartender gets enough followers on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, that they could actually become a good business asset to a bar. If they're working, then 5,000 local guests, they see that they're there, that's where they want to go to see them. And that means you can definitely make a connection between having certain bartenders work in your bar, financial input. And that's where bartenders, I guess, haven't adapted yet. Because the change has been so fast, that's why there's a new generation that's much faster. Once bartenders become those thought leaders or opinion leaders in their particular field, we'll see another huge change. I think digital communication is democracy, but you have to opt in. If you have 1,000 fans, loyal fans, that are willing to spend 100 euros on you over the course of 12 months, you've just got 100 grand. And so that's the question you should be answering yourself. Now, let's see if you can do that in a bar. What can you do to 100 loyal customers to make them come back? What special things you can do to make them feel loved, to make them form a bond with you? And I think that is the most important thing. It's not the number of followers, it's how much of them are willing to engage with you, communicate with you. And that sometimes is the more kind of uninteresting things, such as responding to direct messages and not leaving them for 50 years, replying to comments, listening to the feedback. It sounds silly, but it's the same. There's a huge similarity between regulars in a bar and forming a community online. The people that comment, share your Instagram posts are your regulars. So that's who you need to focus on. I think the most important thing we have to remember is, of course, this is a very, very difficult question to answer because there's a lot of layers to it. Culture, geographical location, concept of venue. But if we're talking about your more neighborhood bar that you might go to a lot more than, say, a destination bar, the reason that you go to that neighborhood bar is because you feel comfortable. And that is a very underrated idea. Comfort is how the seats feel, how the place smells, the light, your relationship with the bartenders that are there. most of the time, the bars that are famous that then suddenly are not famous anymore is because the people that have worked there for years and created that atmosphere have gone. There's always some sort of scandal and the whole team leaves. And then of course it doesn't have the same vibe. You know, there's people make the bar. That's both guests and the people that work there. Otherwise it's just an empty church. Turnover in the industry will always be a thing. People, like I said, people don't choose this career. So very often it's a byproduct. And so I would say we cycle through generations of bartenders every 3 years. The key thing is in every bar there is foundations. And those foundations are based on the training and who does the training or who lays those foundations. And so that training of how we behave with guests, how we treat each other, how we do the work is the most important thing. So that's kind of the deal. I believe that every bar owner should focus on retaining those staff that know how it goes and then reinforce training into the new staff so that if anything does happen, we still have a particular way to go about things that sticks with the guests. There's nothing more disappointing for a normal guest when they're talking to another one of their friends saying, hey, what about that bar? Oh, it's not the same. The most dangerous thing that your guests can say about your venue, it's not the same as it was before.